Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to today's webinar on implementing the just transition in urban areas. My name is Karishma Asarpura, and I'm an officer with the Climate Action Team at ICLEI World Secretariat based in Bonn, and I coordinate activities under the Urban Shift project for ICLEI. Next slide, please. So before we get started, I'd like to go over a few technical details. Today's webinar will be available in English, Mandarin Chinese, and Bahasa Indonesia. So please click on the interpretation symbol, that's the little globe icon in your control panel, to select your preferred language channel. We would also like to inform you that this webinar is being recorded, and the recordings in all the languages will be shared after the event. Next slide, please. If you have any questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A box. You may send in your questions at any time during the webinar. We will try and answer them via the chat or during the Q&A that will take place towards the end of the webinar. I'd also like to take this chance to let you know that the chat box is available for us to have a more interactive session. So I want to invite you to say hello. Tell us where you're from and what organization you represent. We would also get to know you. We would also like to learn more about you. Next slide. So Urban Shift is funded by the Global Environment Facility and led by the United Nations Environment Programme in partnership with the World Resources Institute, ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability, C40 Cities, UNDP, the World Bank, and the Asian Development Bank. Urban Shift supports cities in 9 countries to adopt integrated approaches to urban development through many different opportunities and activities. Next slide, please. So coming to our discussion for today, I'm excited to introduce our panelists who come from different backgrounds of expertise and are here to share their insights with us. So we have joining us today Dr. Junyi Hua, who's an associate professor at the Ocean University of China, Dora Marema, the head of the Municipal Sustainability Portfolio from the South African Local Government Association, Fabi Tumiva, Executive Director at the Institute for Essential Services Reform, based in Jakarta, Indonesia, Emmanuel Azhar, representing Balikpapan, Indonesia, who is also part of the Urban Shift Project, one of the cities benefiting from our offerings, and Devi Sari, my colleague, who will be the moderator for the discussion. So all of our panelists will, of course, introduce themselves as well. I'd now like to invite Devi. I want to hand over to her to kick off the discussion for us. So Devi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karisma. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are watching at the moment. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Dewi Sari. I'm a Climate Action Officer at ICLEI World Secretariat. And in the next 35 minutes, I will be guiding the moderation of this session. First of all, here I would like to introduce 4 of our speakers. So we have 4 speakers from South Africa, from China, and from Indonesia. The first speaker is Fabi Tumiva, an Executive Director from Institute for Essential Service Reform. It's an Indonesian think tank in energy policy and environment that advocate for the low-carbon energy transition in Indonesia. Pak Fabi has more than 20 years in energy policy and regulation and also renewable energy practitioner. He also advised Indonesian government agency, businesses, NGO, multi-development organization on the topic of electricity, renewable energy, and energy efficiency, finance, as well as climate change policy. Pak Fabi, could you perhaps just like say hello or maybe just wave your hand so the audience can see you?
Yes, Devi. Hi, how are you? Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I cannot turn on my camera. Something wrong with my Zoom, I think. My name is Fabi Tumiwa. I'm Executive Director of Institute for Essential Service Reform. ISR is a energy and climate policy think tank based in Jakarta, Indonesia, and happy to be here to speak on this webinar. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fabi. And the second speaker, we have Ms. Dora Marema from South Africa, from SALGA, South African Local Government Association. Ms. Dora is a founder of an NGO called Gender CC Southern Africa, Women for Climate Justice. It is in 2028, founded in 2028. She's working with civil society organization, activists, and experts from the Southern African region, also working in the topic of women's rights, gender, and climate justice. Her expertise, including infrastructure delivery, spatial transformation services, and inclusive community. Welcome, Ms. Dora. Could you say hello to the audience and maybe introduce yourself also a little bit more? Thanks.
Hi, greetings to the audience. As I've been introduced, I'm very much excited as I am working with South African Local Government Association. We support the municipalities in South Africa on their climate action planning as well as the just transition implementation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Dora. And yeah, next we will move to China. And now we have here also Dr. Yun Yi Hua. He's an associate professor from School of International Affairs and Public Administration from Ocean University of China. His research interest in urban climate change adaptation, extreme heat, risk, and vulnerability, as well as green and blue infrastructure. He also served as a young editor for Advance in the Climate Change Research. It's so nice to have like young people also to be in our speaker in this session. Hello, Dr. Hua. Dr. Hua, could you please also say hello to the audience and introduce yourself a little bit more? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Okay, first, I want to thank the organizers from Equitable for inviting me to attend the webinar. Actually, as David introduced, my research mainly focused on climate change risk assessment, adaptation to extreme heat. Before I joined the Ocean University of China, actually, I studied and worked for years at the University of Hong Kong. So yes, that's my background. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hua. And last but not least, we have here the representation from the Regional Development Planning Agency, Bapeda of Balikpapan City in Indonesia. We have here Mr. Emmanuel Azar. He is responsible for developing programs and activities related to spatial planning and natural resources, and encompassing areas such as environmental management, land affairs, spatial arrangement, and energy resource. So, Mr. Emmanuel, please say hello to audience and also say a little bit about yourself and your role. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Next we will be in Indonesia. I'm introducing myself. Jadi perkenalkan, nama saya Manuel Azhar. Saya dari Bapeda Litbang Kota Balikpapan.
From Bapeda Litbang Balikpapan, I'm working as the coordinator in natural resources and spatial planning, and I'm trying to replicate what is the latest technology in climate change, because we have a new capital, the city, which is the border of with different countries. That's all from me. Thank you.
So before we go into the deep discussion, perhaps I will share a little bit of the context of our webinar for today. It's regarding the building equitable future, implementing a just transition in urban environments. So when we talk about like building equitable future, it's the future that we dream of, where the next generation, they don't need to worry about the climate crisis, water crisis, energy crisis, losing the job, and any other challenge that caused by the climate change. In order to do so, the IPCC report say that accelerating climate action and progress toward a just transition is very essential in reducing the climate risks and also addressing the sustainable development priorities. In fact, there is no single definition or a one-size-fits-all solution for a just transition. However, international consensus emphasizes that just transition must be fair and also inclusive. Therefore, in today's webinar, we will hear from our speakers from South Africa, Indonesia, and China, each at a different stages of implementing their just transition plan. Some perhaps further along than others, but no matter where they are in the process, we believe taking progress is the key. Therefore, we will also talk in this webinar about the key performance indicators or KPIs that play crucial and important role in helping the institution, countries, province, municipalities, cities to measure success, adjust strategies, and also ensure the transparency and accountability. We know that most of the just transition plan are currently only being developed at the national level. Therefore, in this webinar, we particularly interested in understanding how local government are being involved in both the planning and implementation of the just transition, also including the monitoring, and also how they can lead or at the very least become enablers of the just transition. And to be mindful of the time, let us just hear from our speakers. So first, Bapak Febi Tumia, hello again, and thank you for being here. So Indonesia recently entered a new governmental era. Therefore, we would like to know how this new administration plan to advance its just transition effort. And also, it was recently announced that Indonesia will soon receive a Just Energy Transition Partnership, or JETP deal. Perhaps you could also provide us more detail on this partnership deal. So the floor is yours, Pak Fabi.
Yes, thank you, Devi, for the question. Just for the context, I think you mentioned that we had a new administration. Yes, we just had a new president and vice president inaugurated last Sunday, actually. So it's pretty new, and the cabinet is just formed. So if you ask me what would be the new administration's program or approach toward just energy transition, it still remains to be seen, because they are just still inaugurated, and we have a number of ministries, new ministries coming up, I think, and that's we still have to see what would be the reactions. But it's true. But in terms of energy transitions, the previous administration already set kind of a target and goals for the energy transitions. In 2021, the previous president, President Joko Widodo, has announced that Indonesia should achieve energy transition with the goal that our energy system will be to be decarbonized by 2060 or sooner, and that's become kind of a target for in the previous administrations. And from 2021 to today, the government has been trying to make this pledge into a more programmatic approach. So we have seen that new energy policy has been developing to align with that target, so to 2060, because one of the strategy that governments are pushing is the deployment of renewable energy. So we know that energy transition is a result of the long-term process right? And along the way, the government focused on increasing renewable energy in our energy system. So so if we talk about energy system, so it's a power system, transport, and industries. So the government right now is really focused on increasing renewable energy in power system in order to achieve decarbonization of power system by before 2060. Yeah, and that's focus so far. In 2022, during Indonesia presidencies for G20, government set up priority theme for this G20, which is energy transition. And at the same time, then we know that the first Just Energy Transition Partnership launched in Glasgow, which is between IPG, International Partners Group, with South Africa. So in 2022, during the presidency of G20, Indonesia started to negotiate with International Partner Group, with IPG, on Indonesia Just Energy Transition Partnership. The negotiation concluded in November. So during the summit, G20 summit in November, government announced Just Energy Transition Partnership. And Indonesia Just Energy Transition Partnership, which comprises of a number of targets. The first that reaching peaking emission of power sector. So this focus on power sector only, reaching power sector peaking emission for power sector by 2030. So it's agreed on 290 million ton of CO2 and reaching net zero by 2060. And along with that, the target to increase renewable energy mix 44% in the power system by 2030 lead to the 100% or more, or around that by 2050. But 44% is actually the renewable energy mix target. So after that agreement has reached, then starting in early 2023, the government established this Just Energy Transition Partnership Secretariat, and along that, 4 working groups to work on preparing the comprehensive investment policy plan. So the JETP also come up with the financing pledge, $20 billion of financing, in which $10 billion is a commitment from IPG, and another $10 billion from Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, or GFAN, which is actually financial institutions. Right? So in November 2023, the government and Indonesian government and IPG jointly launched comprehensive investment policy plan that basically stated strategy to achieve the JETP target, the emission peak, and policy reform that is actually needed, the just transition principle, which one of the important principle is no one left behind, I think, and the investment requirement to meet the 2030 goal, which in the CIPPs it's calculated $97 billion of investment needed to build clean energy infrastructure. So that's power plant, transmission, also for just energy transition program. So that's overall situations in Indonesia. So we are still working on implementing the JETP right now. Mid of this year, there's a number of projects that already agreed to be financed. I think around 6 projects that agreed to be financed around with a investment around $800 million. There is a more project currently in the pipeline under review and negotiations. Yeah, so that's another $1 or $2 billion, and some of the technical assistance which come in the form of grant has been implemented through different partnership and cooperation. So that's overall situations on progress of Indonesia JETP.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Fabi. That was like impressive plan for Indonesia to be more advanced in the renewable energy and also in a just transition plan. Yeah, we wish you good luck for that, and also Indonesia good luck for this implementation of just transition. And then we will move to our next speaker, Ms. Dora from Salga. So my question is, like, we know that significantly progress also met at the national level in South Africa in terms of just transition. In this case, actually, we are curious to know what is the role of the local government in this process so far, and then how will they be involved in the implementation phase. And also, other than that, we know that also, like, regarding the KPI, we would like to know, has South Africa developed KPIs to measure the success of just transition at the national level? And if yes, also, what are the potential KPI that could be relevant and be adapted for this urban area? So please, Ms. Dora, the floor is yours.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity again, for inviting us to be part of this webinar. As you know, I think if you just said, South Africa is right in the middle of the just transition, focusing very much at the beginning on the just energy transition. We've got the just transition framework that has been put together through a process, a multi-stakeholder process led by the Presidential Climate Commission. And that was then accepted by the president of the country in the year 2022. Really, the objective of this was to look at how South Africa can be part of the global transition to sustainable economies, and looking at how we can be able to transition our society to a cleaner and net carbon zero development. So the framework itself then set up various processes, and since then we have put together the just urban transition kind of framework that tries to look at what would be the role of local government broadly, but again in this instance looking at what role could cities be able to play. So we know that, for South Africa to be able to achieve its greenhouse gas mitigation goal, it will require quite a lot of decarbonization effort coming, from all sectors of society, from the economy, not only limited to the energy sector. And we know that whole process is then going to be filled, or it's been filled with a lot of transition risks. As you know, that many cities are dependent on residents and businesses that are reliant, I think, to a large extent, on some of the carbon-intensive economies. And if you think of the case of South Africa, which is mostly coal production as well as cement and things like that, and we know that the transition then in itself will have some risks, and even as households are transitioning from the coal-based electricity to now renewable energy, which is what we have seen in the past couple of years, when a lot of us were trying to mitigate the impacts of the electricity load shedding or the load reduction. That municipalities or cities started to lose some of their revenue. Because a lot of cities are reliant on the revenue that is generated through electricity reticulation. So as households are moving towards producing their own electricity using renewable energy forms, that is also another risk in terms of the revenue that the cities will be able to generate. But what is important is that cities really aggregate a lot of climate opportunities and risks, and they are really where the battle of sustainable development will be won or lost in this country. And as a result, we understand that, with the ongoing urbanization, neither the country's just transition nor the country's nationally determined contributions to reduce its carbon emission will prove tenable unless supported and enacted by the cities in this country. And if cities meet their mitigation targets outlined in a number of those that have already put together climate action plans and strategies, they would have to contribute at least about 40% reduction in terms of what the country has set itself to be able to do that. So we desperately need the just urban transition in this country, given our historical situation, which is mostly a population that is approaching 2/3 urban, and really producing quite a number of greenhouse gas emissions per capita. So it is important that there is a role that is carved out for cities, if not the broader local government. So as a result, the South African Local Government Association has been working with others to ensure that cities are really actively participating. We started first by nominating the 2 mayors who are now forming part of the commissioners that are part of the Presidential Climate Commission that is responsible for moving or galvanizing the entire society and the country towards the just transition or low carbon development pathway. And with that, then there has been a couple of conversations on the energy transition itself. You probably are aware that South Africa has got the Just Energy Transition implementation plan and investment plan, and we have also generated an implementation plan of that investment plan. And part of it, there's a huge, a sizable portion of it called the Just Energy Transition Municipal Portfolio. And just in I think a couple of months ago, in the beginning of August, ourselves together with the presidency, there is a unit within the South African Presidency Office called the Just Energy Transition Project Management Unit. We then co-hosted the inaugural Just Energy Transition Municipal Conference, where we brought all the 257 mayors and municipal managers and their technical directors responsible for electricity and energy together with the ministers that are the key ministers, Minister of Energy and Electricity, the Minister of Treasury and Finance, Minister of Environment, and the Minister of Cooperative Governance, as well as the state president, to be able to agree on this piece of work in terms of what would be the role of local government and the cities in the South Africa's just energy transition. And the South African local government was then given a mandate to host the secretariat to coordinate this piece of work around the just energy transition municipal portfolio. It has got 3 work streams. The one work stream is on access to finance. The second one is on municipal capacity, and the other one is on access to energy itself, where we are looking at issues of energy poverty and the likes. And we are working with the various institutions in the country to be able to coordinate these work streams. It is in its early stages, in that the South African Local Government Organization Association, my organization, we are busy setting up the secretariat to be able to steer this work. There is the investment, as I said, which is mostly supported by the IPG, the Investment Partnership Group, I think similar to what is happening in Indonesia. And what we are trying to do is to carve out some of those investments and direct them to cities and to municipalities broadly. There is work that is going parallel to this work that we're doing, headed by the the climate change mitigation section unit of the Presidential Climate Commission that is looking at developing a tool, a municipal self-assessment tool to look at the state of readiness of cities and municipalities in terms of implementing the just energy transition. Obviously, access to finance is really critical. For us, it's not only about mitigating the impacts of climate change, it is also about building resilience. A lot of our cities are suffering extreme climate events. You probably, in this country every week, we're seeing a lot of flooding, a lot of cities like eThekwini and Nelson Mandela Bay, as well as city of Cape Town and the Buffalo City in South Africa, many of our coastal cities that are facing extreme climate events, not only in terms of the water restrictions, but largely now destruction of infrastructure and loss of life due to extreme flooding. And we need the investments also to be made on that side of things as well. So it is important that we do that and make sure that there is catalytic funding that is going to be directly accessed by municipalities who are suffering a lot of losses and damages that are not going to be able to be easy for them to recover from. So apart from the investment in terms of transitioning and identifying opportunities through the service delivery mandate of the cities, it is important that we also build resilience. So we have identified some of the key areas in what I can call the key performance indicators, which is focusing really heavily on renewable energy and energy efficiency in cities, low carbon mobility linked to urban placemaking, universal access to waste, water, sanitation services through the circular economy, the built environment and spatial planning, as well as ecological infrastructure and nature-based solutions to disasters and climate impacts as some of the areas that cities could be able to focus on to address the bottlenecks on their service delivery mandate, the issues around job creation that makes the cities unjust places in the first place, reducing those inflationary pressures, introduced by centralized or commodity-dependent service provision that make some of the services that cities are providing to their constituencies unaffordable to most poor households. So we know that the just urban transition is really critical in South Africa because it would benefit a lot of the cities and it would involve creating low carbon, resource efficient, socially inclusive and spatially integrated urban systems in this country. So we are really well vested and we are trying to learn a lot from the current energy transition because we believe that if we are able to understand the changes and that needs to happen in a lot of cities in this country and municipalities, when we get to the other transitions like transport and others, then we would have learned the lessons and municipalities will be better positioned to be able to work with their constituencies to have those conversations and dialogues around the transitions that needs to be made. But we realize that it is important that local government and cities are in the driving seat, supported by various agencies and sectors of society, including the other two levels of government in South Africa, the national and the provincial government, so that they can be able to understand the multi-stakeholder engagement processes that needs to happen to be able to ensure that no one is left behind in their constituencies as we embark on this just transition that has got far-reaching impact on the economies of the cities themselves and the viability of many of the municipalities in this country. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dora. That's a very wide and broad explanation. And then it's good to hear that local government and local association government work together in this. Indeed, is it important for multi-level governance to collaborate together in this process? So let's just move to our next speaker, who is Dr. Hua. So Dr. Hua, talking of perspective from China, would you share how does China take the climate action and then ensure just transition can be achieved at the community level? And then also, to your knowledge, what KPIs can effectively measure the success of just transition, especially in China's cities and municipalities. So I offer to you, Dr. Hua.
Oh, thank you, David. Actually, as Dora just said, we are faced with more flaws, actually. So both mitigation and adaptation, I think, are important ways to respond to climate change. Intensifying extreme weather events such as hurricanes, floods, and heat waves greatly affect people's health and livelihoods and the safety of buildings and the infrastructure. So, as the IPCC suggests, the cities and the communities are a hotspot of extreme weather risks. So, I believe just transition are also important for climate adaptation. So I will briefly talk about my understanding of the just transition for climate adaptation in urban environments in China, especially for urban communities. So in China, we do have national level policies on climate change adaptation. The new national strategy for climate adaptation is towards 2035. It has been issued 2 years ago, and it also includes initiatives for urban climate adaptation. So at the national level, public participation is also officially required. And following the national strategy since last year, provinces are required to introduce their own climate adaptation schemes in China, and some cities also have their own adaptation plans. In the adaptation plans, emergency management is also an important part, and the emergency management systems have been quickly developed as a top-down order in China. So now, communities adaptation mainly relies on local governments and community organizations in China, and both soft and hard measures have been implemented to cope with the risks in communities. For example, some temporal shelters, special caring, early warning, and as well as climate education. So, and some vulnerable residents, vulnerable groups, like the poor and the disabled, are also targeted. We also have the concept of 30 minutes city. It has been widely accepted in urban planning in China for access to necessary resources. For example, the Shenzhen government is trying to establish some climate adaptive community and explore feasible ways to make this kind of measures really reach residents. So I think it's also important to focus on vulnerable communities. So in China, there are different types of communities or urban settlements. Actually, they are different in both spatial and social features, and I think both of which are related to injustice. So there are old communities in city centers and newly developed communities in city centers as well as in new urban areas, and urban villages and communities transformed from rural villages. Communities transformed from rural villages, and even some residential communities for large enterprise is quite special in China. So they have different vulnerability features. So in these communities for emergency management, the street government, neighborhood communities, neighborhood committees, social workers, and property management companies usually work together. I want to mention neighborhood committees. It's a kind of special unit in China. They play an important role in connecting local residents and local governments. Actually, they are not a part of governments, but work closely with local governments. So actually, I want to say in different types of communities, the collaboration modes are also different. So and what's more, non-government organizations have also been engaged in community climate adaptation, but not widely. For example, in Guangzhou, there is an organization called Harmony Community Foundation, specifically for community climate actions. They are trying to find and train some people or pioneers in communities to lead local residents, to lead the residents in communities to learn how to reduce climate risks. In many cases, communities and local governments are willing to cooperate with them. However, such non-government organizations and co-learning actions are not very common in China. Sometimes mainly in large cities. The last point is, I think, in central and local policies, climate risks and vulnerability assessment are also highlighted as a very first step. Actually, that's what my research focused on. So policymakers need to know where vulnerable people and assets are located. And according to this survey conducted by the CDP and the Equitable, it's called the city. It's a kind of city annual city questionnaire. Actually, according to this data, some of the main cities in China actually have done climate risk and vulnerability assessment. So I think so all cities are expected to complete it as soon as possible for informing just a transition. So for another question is about the KPIs. I think it's difficult to measure whether just transitions in China, actually, in China cities are successful. Even so, I think there are some options. For example, we can measure the percentage of people with access to social and physical infrastructure, equitable distribution of nature-based solutions, and the percentage of people included into related decision making. And social media data, social media big data, I think, actually have been used to measure public perceptions and satisfaction with living environments. So I think that the most important point of the KPIs is about how measurements really help vulnerable people. And sometimes we have to make trade-offs between the equity and effectiveness actually in decision making. Yes, that's all what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hua. And indeed, we have also to include adaptation and then not only mitigation in the just transition plan. And yeah, we go to our last speaker, Mr. Emmanuel Azar from Balikpapan, Bapeda. Mr. Emmanuel, perhaps you could share best practices on how Balikpapan City contribute to driving a just transition, also at the community level. And other than that, what KPI do you think can effectively measure the success of just transition based on your experience in Balikpapan City? Thank you. Over to you, Mr.
Ya,
Emmanuel.
baik. Terima kasih Ibu Dewi.
Thank you very much, Ibu
Terima
Dewi.
kasih. Perkenalkan saya
Thank you
Emmanuel
very
dari Kota
much.
Balikpapan.
I'm
Jadi Kota
from
Balikpapan sendiri
Balikpapan.
itu merupakan kota
Balikpapan
yang berbatasan
is
langsung
a
dengan ibu
city
kota negara yang baru,
bordering
di
with
mana
the
kondisi
new
saat
capital
ini
city, where the
Indonesia sendiri
current
baru
condition,
melaksanakan pemilihan
Indonesia
umum dan
just
baru melantik
implementing
presiden
the
baru, di mana
election and just
menteri-menteri
inaugurate
dan kementerian
the
itu
president and the ministries
memiliki kebijakan-kebijakan yang akan datang
have
itu lebih baru. Dan
new
itu berpengaruh
policies,
juga ke level
and it is
daerah.
influencing to the
Selanjutnya, di
regions.
Kota Balikpapan sendiri,
And in the
karena
Balikpapan
memang
city itself,
adanya tuntutan ibu kota negara yang
there
baru,
is, because of
kami
the
harus
demand
bisa
of a new
mengelola
capital
wilayah
city,
kami sendiri,
we have to be able
baik
to
itu dari
manage
segi
our
ketahanan
own
maupun
region
dari
in terms of defense and
perubahan iklim yang
resilience, and also
memang
the climate change,
kami merasakan adanya
where
ibu kota
we
negara baru
feel
ini
that with this
pertambahan
new
penduduk
capital
dari
city,
migrasi itu
the
cukup tinggi,
additional
sehingga
population from
mempengaruhi
migration
tekanan
is
terhadap
quite high and is
kegiatan di
giving
Kota Balikpapan.
pressure,
Dalam hal
give
ini dalam
pressure to the
persampahan maupun
activities in
sektor
Balikpapan
transportasi secara langsung
in terms of
dirasakan adanya
waste and also
perubahan-perubahan
transportation,
itu.
and we feel that there are
Ya, di
changes
samping itu terkait dengan
in
energi
addition,
ini, Kota
regarding
Balikpapan
energy,
telah
Balikpapan City
mengimplementasi
has
melalui
implemented
dokumen
through
rencana
the
aksi daerah
document for the regional
kaca.
action
Di
plan
dalamnya
in the
melalui Dinas Lingkungan Hidup
green gas
kami
houses through environmental
mereka
agency.
menyajikan beberapa aksi
They
daerah
have presented
terkait dengan
regional
untuk
actions
penurunan emisi gas rumah kaca.
to reduce
Hal-hal
green
itu
gas
nanti akan
houses,
diukur dan
and
dilaporkan
it will be measured and will be
melalui
reported through
webnya Bappenas melalui
through the
Axelar.
website
Di
of the
situ
National
yang
Development
akan
Planning
diukur adalah
Agency, that
ton
what
CO2
will be
ekuivalen yang
measured
berhasil direduksi
is
dari
what
hasil-hasil
could be
yang
reduced
ditetapkan melalui
as established
aksi di dalam
from in
dokumentasi daerah gas
in
rumah
the
kaca itu.
roadmap
Di
of
samping
the
itu,
green gas
Kota Balikpapan
houses.
juga
And Balikpapan
melaksanakan
city
pengukuran
itself
melalui
has measured
indeks kualitas lingkungan
through
hidup,
index
di mana saat ini
environmental index,
Kota Balikpapan sedang
where
menyusun
Balikpapan has formulated
perencanaan pembangunan jangka panjang dan jangka
development
menengah.
long-term
Di dalamnya
development
juga
plan and
termasuk
mid-term
indeks
development plan, including
indeks
the index
lingkungan hidup tadi,
of
sehingga
environmental index. Therefore,
tidak secara eksplisit
but it is
menyajikan
not
berapa
explicitly presenting
energi yang mampu dikonversi dari
the
penggunaan
energy that could be
energi baru
converted
terbarukan,
through
tetapi
to
hanya
renewable
berdasarkan
energy
dari
based
cakupan lahan dan ada
on the coverage of
kegiatan-kegiatan lain yang
land
nanti
and other
diformulasikan menjadi
activities which will
indeks
be
kualitas lingkungan hidup
formulated
skala
to
kota.
become city,
Terkait
urban
dengan
city environmental index.
implementasi lainnya,
Regarding the
Kota Balikpapan
implementation,
juga
Balikpapan
mendapat
City
bantuan
also received
dari
assistance
ini apa namanya FCPF. FCPF itu
from
sendiri adalah
FCPF, which is
Carbon Forest Partnership,
Carbon
yang di
Forest
dalamnya
Partnership.
adalah apabila suatu negara
So,
berhasil
if
mereduksi emisi gas
the
rumah kaca
country could
melalui
reduce
deforestasi
green
dan
gas
degradasi
houses
hutan,
through deforestation
itu
and
mereka
the
mendapat
forest
insentif.
degradation,
Dan
they will receive
Provinsi
incentive.
Kalimantan Timur
And
merupakan
the
salah
province
satu
of East
provinsi yang berhasil
Kalimantan
mendapatkan
is
itu.
one of the
Dan
provinces
Kota
that could
Balikpapan
receive that.
mendapat
And
di
Balikpapan,
situ dana yang didapat
the
dikelola
funds which
oleh
are
Kota Balikpapan
received
melalui
managed by Balikpapan
kampung iklim.
through
Kampung
a
iklim di
climate
sini adalah community
village.
level, di mana
This is a community level,
ini merupakan bagian dari
which is part of.
di kelurahan-kelurahan yang ada di Kota
So
Balikpapan ini,
at the
masing-masing
sub-district in
memiliki kampung
Balikpapan,
yang memang
each sub-district has
isi di dalamnya
village,
adalah kelompok
and
orang yang mampu
there is a group of
mengelola
people that could
kampung
manage
mereka dengan
their villages,
berbasis dengan lingkungan hidup,
which is based
tapi belum sampai
environmental
ke arah
based, but
perubahan energi baru
not
terbarukan,
up
masih
to
sekitar
the
ketahanan
renewable
terhadap
energy.
iklim,
Only
kemudian
the
pengelolaan
climate
persampahan secara
resilience
mandiri
and
dan
also
lain-lain.
independent
Sebagai informasi,
waste
Kota Balikpapan
management.
mendapatkan
For your information,
pendanaan 3 miliar
Balikpapan received
yang itu nanti
funds 3
dialokasikan
billion,
kepada
and it will be allocated
kampung-kampung iklim tersebut
to
untuk
the climate
dikelola dan
villages
di-scale up
to be managed
terkait
and to be
dengan
scaled up
kemampuan dari pengelolaan
according to the
kampung-kampung yang ada
capability
yang
in
kita
managing
bina di
all
Kota
the
Balikpapan.
villages in Balikpapan.
Selain itu,
In
dari
addition,
level komunitas,
from the community
kami
level,
juga karena tadi sudah disampaikan di awal, karena memang
as
adanya IKN ini
mentioned earlier,
meningkatkan
this
kontribusi
new
persampahan ke
capital
Kota
city,
Balikpapan,
there is a
sehingga
contribution of waste to the
sampah ini di
city,
TPA
and the waste
menumpuk,
at the
dan
landfill
ini
is
memperpendek umur
accumulated. And
TPA
this is
yang
shorten the
diperkirakan
life
pada
of the
2
cycle,
tahun ke
life
depan akan
cycle of the
mengalami
landfill. And in the next 2
penuhan.
years, it will
Hal ini
be full, and
melalui Kementerian
through
Lingkungan
the
Hidup telah
Ministry
melakukan
of Environmental
pembukaan
Affairs, it is
TPA-TPA baru,
prohibited
tapi
to open
kami akan
new
mencoba memperpanjang umur
waste
TPA melalui kegiatan
open
public-private
space, and
partnership
we are now
untuk
trying
memperpanjang
to
umur
do
TPA kami
PPP
sehingga
to
dapat
extend the lives of
berjalan
the
sustainable
cycle
dengan
of the
harapan 40 tahun ke
landfill,
depan
so that
masih
it
tetap
is
dapat beroperasi.
sustainable
Di samping
and
itu, di
hopefully
dalam
could
TPA
work
kami
could
mempunyai
still be
program itu waste to
used for the
energy.
next 40 years.
Waste to
And we also
energy
have a
di sini
program
adalah
waste to energy. Waste to
di
energy
TPA
is
gas
in the
metan yang
landfill,
melalui sanitary
the
landfill
methane gas through
itu
the sanitary
gas metan
landfill,
yang keluar
the methane
ditangkap
gas which is
dan
exposed
dimanfaatkan
will be
untuk
captured and will be
masyarakat
used
sekitar.
for the people in the
Dari data
surrounding
yang kita peroleh
area.
adalah
From the
mereka
data that we receive,
di sini adalah mampu memanfaatkan
it is capable to
462
utilize
meter kubik gas metan
462
yang dapat dimanfaatkan
meter
warga di
cubic
sekitar.
methane gas that could be
Kemudian
utilized by the
ini
citizens
mampu
in the surrounding
menghidupi
area,
sekitar
and it could be,
ada 200 sambungan rumah
and there
yang
are
itu
200
memanfaatkan
households that could
gas
utilize
dari gas TPA untuk
this
dimanfaatkan untuk
methane
memasak
gas
dan kegiatan
to
sehari-hari.
cook
Ada
and to do
610
their daily
warga
activities.
yang
There is
terdampak,
640
kemudian
cities which are
ada
impacted,
26 perempuan
and there are
yang terlibat
26
di dalamnya karena memang
females
ada
involved
pengelolanya, sehingga mereka
because they
secara
are
mandiri
managing
memberi
this, and so
ada iuran
independently
dan ada
they
hal
have to
lain
pay
yang dikeluarkan
fee
untuk
and
OPOM-nya, sehingga eh, kami hanya membangun infrastruktur dan
and we
ini
just
melalui
built the
CSR juga
infrastructure,
terlibat.
and this
Dalam
is
hal ini adalah
this is through
Pertamina.
the CSR, and Pertamina is involved
membangunkan
here.
jaringan infrastrukturnya,
Pertamina
kami
is developed
hanya
the
di dalam PPA-nya
infrastructure
saja.
network.
Kemudian ini juga bermanfaat
This is
dari
also
sisi ekonomi,
beneficial in
membantu
terms
10
of
UMKM
economy,
yang ada di sana, yaitu
helping
UMKM
the
pembuatan tahu
SME
dan tahu tempe
for
itu,
making the
kemudian
tofu and
sudah memanfaatkan gas
soya
metan,
bean cakes,
sehingga
and
dapat
that
melakukan
utilize the
penghematan
methane gas,
sekitar
and so there is a saving
330
of
juta
330
per
million
tahun
per year.
Nah, itulah salah satu contoh
So
best
that is
practice
one
dari kami, yaitu
example,
implementasi dari
the
kampung iklim
implementation
dan
of the
adanya
Kampung Iklim or climate village,
waste to energy di TPA Manggar.
waste to energy.
Selanjutnya memang kami juga bekerja sama dengan
We also
PLN
cooperate with
dalam hal
the
ini dalam
state electricity
penyediaan
company in
bahan
providing
bakar jumputan padat, karena memang
and also
kami
solid
di Kota Balikpapan
fuel,
memiliki
because in
PLTU
Balikpapan
yang dikelola
we have
PLN dengan kapasitas 2 kali 100
power plant
megawatt yang masih berbahan
to-
bakar
which is
batu
the
bara,
fuel,
dan
a
kami
coal-based
bekerja sama
fuel,
dengan
and we work
PLN
together
untuk mengelola
with the state
sampah-sampah
electricity company
organik
to manage
menjadi
organic
sampah
waste to
yang bisa
become
dijadi bahan bakar
waste
padat
which
jumputan
is could be
untuk
made the
co-firing
solid
PLTU
fuel
Balikpapan dengan kapasitas
to
rata-rata 5
supply
sampai
the
10 ton
power
per
plant
bulan.
with capacity 5 to
Sehingga
10
ini
tons
nanti
per month. And
kedepannya kami masih
in the
mencoba
future,
mengevaluasi apakah ini
we
dapat
will
berkelanjutan
still
atau tidak,
evaluate whether it
atau
is
memang
sustainable
perlu
or not,
teknologi
or
baru
we
untuk
need new
intervensi
technology to
kesinambungan
for
dari
so that sustainable intervention.
co-firing ini. Secara teknis itu hal-hal yang dapat kami
Technically,
sajikan dari
this
Kota
is what we could
Balikpapan.
present from
Namun terkait dengan
Balikpapan, but with regard to
GEFT ini sendiri, kami
GFT
belum
itself,
sampai mengukur kedetailannya
we
itu
have not
sedalam apa, karena memang
measured the
dari dua
details
hal
how,
tadi,
because
gas rumah kaca dan
from
indeks
the
kualitas
green
lingkungan
gas
hidup
houses
itu,
and the
outputnya
environmental
adalah
index,
pengukuran terhadap
the output
reduksi
is the
terhadap
measurement to
CO2
the
equivalent, belum
reduction
sampai
of
kita
CO2,
mengukur kepada
and we have not measured
berapa sih energi terbarukan
how
megawatt
much renewable
yang
energy in
berhasil
megawatt,
dikonversi dari
which could be
penggunaan
converted from the use of
komponen-komponen
components,
energi baru terbarukan di Kota Balikpapan.
new and renewable
Mungkin dari
energy in
kami itu saja,
Balikpapan
karena
City.
memang dari
That's
pusat
all
sendiri
from
masih
me,
belum
because in the national level,
memformulasikan
we
bagaimana
still
cara
not
aturan
formulated
mainnya
what is the
dan
regulation
segala macamnya
and
terkait dengan pelaksanaan
regarding
ini
the
di level
implementation.
kabupaten kota.
This is
Selain
only at the
itu,
level
Bappedalit
of the
Bank Kota
Regency and
Balikpapan juga
City,
sudah
and
melakukan
also
mapping
Balikpapan has
terhadap
already
belanja di
mapped
seluruh
according to the spending
dinas di Kota
in all
Balikpapan,
the service office in
sehingga
Balikpapan
nanti
City.
ketika
And
belanja-belanja itu
therefore, when
berpengaruh
all
terhadap
the expenses or the
terkait perubahan
spending
iklim
influencing
maupun
to the
terhadap
climate
reduksi
change
karbon,
or to the
itu sudah
carbon
kami
reduction,
petakan sehingga kami
we
dapat
already have mapped it out,
mengumpulkan
and we could collect,
hal-hal itu tadi untuk kami carikan pada pendanaan alternatif yang lainnya. Karena memang
we could
pendanaan
identify,
alternatif
and then we
sendiri
could
sangat
try to
terbuka
find
untuk
alternative funding so
GEPT
that
ini
because
melalui kegiatan-kegiatan yang mungkin
through the activities,
pendanaan berbasis hasil, kemudian dana
this is
transisi,
product
kemudian
sharing
obligasi hijau,
and then
blended finance, dan
green
pemintahan
bonds,
publik
and
swasta maupun pembiayaan
together with the
multilateral.
private sector
Jadi
and also
pembangunan
multilateral
infrastruktur yang berbau
finance. So the
perubahan
infrastructure
iklim dan
development, which
kedepannya
is
juga
related to
NBS,
climate change
nature based
and
solution,
also
akan kami
nature-based
petakan
solution,
sehingga kami dapat
we will
memberikan
try to
pembiayaan alternatif
implement.
yang bisa
And so
dibantu
we have
melalui
alternative
IKLE
that
dan
we could
kelompok-kelompok
be assisted
lainnya,
by
lembaga
ICLE
untuk dapat
and
disalurkan
also
kepada lembaga
other
donor untuk
donors.
dapat kami mendapatkan
So we could
benefit
obtain the benefits
untuk dilaksanakan pendampingan maupun
so that
dari
we could
pembangunan
have
fisik secara
guidance
keseluruhan.
and so maybe physical
Mungkin
development
itu
as
saja
well.
dari kami
That's
terkait
all
gambaran
from
umum
me
apa yang telah
regarding
dilakukan
to
Kota
the
Balikpapan,
overall picture
keadaan
about Balikpapan
community
and the
levelnya terkait dengan
condition at the community level
GEPT
related
ini sendiri,
to
dan
the
harapan kami ketika kami mampu mengimplementasi ini untuk
when we could
dapat didorong
implement this, that
mendapatkan pembiayaan
so I hope
multilateral
we could
melalui
receive the
Green Finance Fund secara
multilateral
luas
financing
yang
and
nantinya
it could be
yang
used
bisa diaplikasikan
extensively.
Kota Balikpapan. Saya rasa itu aja
It
Ibu
could be
Dewi.
used in Balikpapan. I
Yes,
think that's all,
thank you
Ibu
very much,
Dewi.
Pak Emmanuel.
Thank you very much,
Yes,
Pak Emmanuel.
So yeah, we look forward for the continuation of the project of Kampung Iklim and also the energy transition in Balikpapan. So we come to the end of the session, and unfortunately, we don't have time to answer more questions. So I will just wrap it up like in a very short way. So the conclusion is like just transition is diverse from like one country to the others, one city to the others, and then we should also include not only mitigation action but also adaptation action in this process. And then most importantly, that we have to collaborate in partnership together from different level, international, national, and also city level, and we don't need to forget the community level also to be integrated in this process. And then most importantly, that we also can support with the funding, international funding in this process. So that's the end of the session, and I will just give it back to Karisma for the closing for this webinar. Thank you very much for our speakers and also for the audience to be here.
Great. Thank you for taking us through that, Davy. Those were some very detailed and comprehensive remarks. So thanks to all our panelists for taking the time to join us and sharing their expertise. We really appreciate it. And of course, thanks to all my colleagues for their support. So the next Urban Shift webinar will be led by our partners at UNEP, and it will be on the topic of scaling urban climate finance through multi-level governance, and it will take place on December 4th. So if you wish to stay up to date with the latest on the Urban Shift project, you can sign up to our newsletter and connect with us via email or social media. So thanks to everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.